name is Jenny, and I'm a wife and mom raising 2 kids. But I used to live a more glamorous life as a TV reporter. I was on the nightly news interviewing pop stars and politicians. So when I said goodbye to TV and hello to motherhood, I suddenly discovered what we moms are up against. We live in a world that tells us to be rich and famous, thin and successful. You know, almost nobody says, "Oh, hey, you're a mom? That's fabulous." But you are fabulous, and I'm here to tell you why.
It's the Channelmom Show, celebrating you with Jenny Dean Schmidt.
Welcome back to the Channelmom Show on Mile High Sports Radio, AM 1510, FM 93.7. Now, we're going to talk about marriage and relationships. Jamie Kirkbride is not only a licensed counselor, but also speaker, trainer, and contributing author to many parenting books and devotionals. Jamie also happens to be a wife and a mother of 5 children. I interviewed Jamie earlier this week, and I started by talking about the current facts about marriage. Yes, it's a building block of our society, absolutely. That's why I support it. It's romanticized in movies, and until recently, almost everyone was doing it. However, there's been a big shift. Not only do we see the divorce rate above 50%, but stats show that marriage is less popular than ever before in our recorded history. In other words, more people statistically are cohabitating, divorcing, and having children outside of marriage. So more people are just choosing not to get married. So I asked Jamie if she could put her finger on what's going on.
It's sad that some of those statistics are really true, but I think one of the things that happens in society is that, as you mentioned, it's portrayed as something that should be perfect or romanticized in many ways. And when people get in relationships, obviously it's made up of 2 human beings that make some very human mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately people end up thinking, what's wrong with this? Because it doesn't look like what society has portrayed it to be. When realistically, relationships are like anything in life. They're going to have their ups and downs, and they're going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, and I was watching a broadcast about marriage just this morning, and the person was pointing out that so many people look to the other person to satisfy all their needs because that's what they've been told can happen in a good marriage, when in fact it comes back to their own issues, and whether they resolve those internally or by going to a psychologist or by talking to God about it, they say it comes back to that person, and they're expecting too much from the spouse to satisfy all their needs. Would you agree?
I think that's right on, Jenny. You know, sadly enough, I think it's easy for us to look to another human being to help us feel full of joy or help us feel fulfilled or help us seek happiness or, you know, we wouldn't want all of that pressure on us to provide that for someone else, and yet we can so easily look for that in a spouse or in a relationship even. And I think when we set ourselves up with those kind of expectations, we're bound to be disappointed because we're human, they're human, and no one's going to come through 100% of the time. And that's why I think it's so important that we learn to find ways that we can be happy. You know, happiness being a choice and a decision, and joy being a choice and a decision. And ultimately, God's the only one that can fulfill those things 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so sometimes we're sort of expecting our spouses to be perfect,
yes.
and to fulfill all our needs, and that just can't happen. Do you find that a lot in your practice, that's one of the primary complaints? Why can't he just, and why can't she just? And it really comes down to high expectations that can't be met.
Definitely. High expectations, unrealistic expectations, even some things we wouldn't want expected of ourselves. We don't always understand the other person's perspective as well as we do our own. We don't always approach problem solving like another person would. Be it communication, conflict resolution, there's always 2 perspectives. And when we go into a relationship having those high expectations of how that other person's going to do it, we're probably going to be let down.
Right. You know, and you're probably aware of the research more than I am, but there is a lot of research out there about marriage, and most of the research suggests that marriage is actually still very good for us. It's good for our health. It's good for our children, and it's even good for our longevity. For instance, I read an article that said that married men tend to live longer. So marriage, it can be very, very good for us. And in fact, 2/3 of all divorced couples, this is just another statistic I read, 2/3 of all divorced couples report that they either regret or have mixed feelings about getting divorced. So it's almost like after the fact they do realize that it was good enough and that they wish they wouldn't have walked away. So how do people stay married? What are some of the best tips or techniques or attitudes that you have found in your counseling practice that has helped marriages work better?
Well, that's a great question. You've said so many good things there, Jenny. First of all, I think approaching marriage as a relationship that takes work. And when we approach it that way, I think we're not disappointed when it starts to feel like work. It's not always going to be fun and easy. It's not always going to be, romantic and just the way we see it portrayed in society. It's going to be work, and I think when we approach it with that mindset, then we're ready for that. I also think it's important for couples to realize the importance of counseling. And, a lot of couples end up saving counseling for their last-ditch effort to make marriage work. And, I've done a lot of premarital counseling. And, Jenny, one of the most important things I tell couples is that they not save it for a last-ditch effort, but that they use it when they keep hitting that speed bump that just kind of trips them up. And when you need a fresh perspective or you need somebody to maybe offer a different way to approach the same problem, and maybe, you have one way to do it, your spouse has another way to do it, and for some reason you can't come to an agreement. And using counseling as a way to just help you over the speed bumps and not letting it carry such a stigma. I also think it's important to even have couples in your life that you could go to and just get, godly counsel from or encouragement from. People that say, stick in there, you can do this, we've been there, or have you tried this yet? Just having key couples in your life can be a huge help to making marriage work.
I think you're right. I think, 90% of all couples wait till it gets to that crisis point, and then it's almost too late at that point. And then somebody like you is expected to pick up the pieces and make it all right.
Right.
How do you convict couples out there or moms that are listening today that think, we're basically good? Because frankly, first of all, it's very hard for people to even admit they have marriage problems. But second of all, if things are going relatively smoothly, it's hard for them to say, well, these are our speed bumps, and maybe we should pay attention to these before they get like mountains and that we have to try to, get over, which we cannot surmount at that point. How do you convince the moms listening today that it is sort of urgent when they begin to experience those things that they deal with them then, and what are some quick fix techniques? I mean, and even how do they convince their husband that is worth paying attention to early on instead of waiting till the crisis point?
That's a great question, Jenny, and I have wondered that many times as a counselor because it's not uncommon for us to get a call for counseling, and if we have that appointment set out a week, even within that week, that couple can be on their way to divorce or separated, and thus never even get a chance to work with them. Mm-hmm. So I think that in itself testifies to the fact that couples wait too long. Mm-hmm. So the question you're asking is great. How do we get ourselves there sooner? How do we interest the spouse who maybe isn't? And I think there's several ways to do that. I think first of all, just talking openly before things get huge. If there's something that you disagree about, admit to your spouse, you know what, we see this differently, and I can't wrap my mind around your perspective, and I want to. Mm-hmm. And maybe someone else can help me do that. Mm-hmm. And I think if we approach counseling with that kind of approach, then it doesn't have to feel so threatening to our spouse.
Right.
If they know that we really want to come to a compromise, or we really want to come to an agreement, or I really want to work better with you, and I think this other person can help me do that, it feels much more approachable.
I'm familiar with your counseling because you and I did a project several years ago. You do have some techniques that when the couples do get in the room with you that you use to make the woman understand the man and the man understand the woman. In fact, as I sat in on those, it made me understand my husband better. Talk a little bit about the philosophy that you use to help women understand men and their needs better, and men understand women and their needs better. And I know one in particular is the love and respect approach.
Yes. And I think the love and respect approach is so important. And I think oftentimes that's one of the problems going into counseling, is that a spouse may feel that the counselor is going to side with just one of you. And truly in good counseling, it doesn't happen that way. In good counseling, a counselor understands the couple and tries to help everybody come to a healthy perspective. And it's not taking sides, it's just perspective. And for me, that important perspective is one based on love and respect. And just as women long to feel loved, men long to feel respected. And unfortunately, society doesn't portray that very accurately either. And a lot of times I think we're set up to think that everyone deserves to be loved, but that respect is to be earned. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, Jenny, that's pretty backwards, because to a man, respect is as important and as vital as love is to a woman. Mm-hmm. And just like we wouldn't want to have to earn our ability to be loved, they don't want to have to earn their ability to be respected. And as men feel respected, they tend to naturally offer more love. And as women are naturally loved, they tend to offer more respect. And what you see is a very healthy perspective, a very healthy pattern that then allows this couple to connect in far more natural and far more healthy ways.
One of the things I've learned from you is that maybe he doesn't, quote unquote, deserve respect, just as sometimes we don't deserve love, but that when you do offer him respect, even when he's not acting in a way that deserves it at that point, he almost rises up to that. Once you give him a little respect, he almost rises up to that occasion and acts in a way that is more deserving of respect. What do you think?
I think that's true, Jenny. I think that's true. And, if you think of yourself, if I can think of myself on my worst day, grumpy and all, haven't cleaned the house, haven't fixed myself up, I don't think my level of desire for love has changed at all. Mm-hmm. I think I still want to be loved. And just like you said, there's times where maybe our husbands aren't doing things that we respect the behavior, but learning and showing them that we haven't lost our respect for them as a person. So maybe sometimes it's helpful in, being able to separate when they do this. It's hard to respect that. However, I respect him a great deal, and I am going to show him my respect. And as you said, they oftentimes rise to that level and say, she respects me. I'm going to live it out.
Jamie is going to talk to some callers about their marriages after the break, so we'll get back with Jamie. Meanwhile, we have another Channel Mom sampler pack available. It has wonderful stuff in it. Whipped body butter, and that bronzing cream is wonderful for summer. You put it on and you look really tan and you have kind of a sheen. It's terrific. So call 303-297-1510 if you'd like to win that. And you know what? You can also watch us on channelmom.com. Meanwhile, this is the Channel Mom Show on Mile High Sports Radio, AM 1510, FM 93.7, and we'll talk to Jamie again after the break.